Hi everyone, it's Jessica. I have a fun project for you today that was inspired by a couple of cards that I recently made using some of my Lawn Fawn stamp sets. So I used just my type and love poems to create these cards. And actually this card here, which is so fun, it uses the reveal wheel to turn that message in the typewriter. That one I actually made as part of a class over at Lawn Fawn where the proceeds of the class were to benefit residents of North Carolina who are still kind of dealing with some of the fallout from the hurricane this fall. And then this is another one that I made, and I just thought that those mice in the desk and the typewriter were so cute that I thought I wanted to incorporate them onto a scrapbooking layout. So I immediately thought of this picture here of me with my cat Boo, and I will tell you a little bit more about the story behind the photo later and why I think it's going to go so well with these card making stamps. I also thought of a paper stack that I had in my stash. This is from close to my heart, called Life's a Hoot. And I knew that the colors in the papers would work really well with the colors in my photos. So I was thinking of the blue in my sweater. And then I know I've got a couple of little scraps in here. There's one that's got like a striped pattern to it with a whole bunch of different colors, including like a turquoise color. And that's going to match the color of the walls in the background. So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to use that paper pack. As far as a layout inspiration, I actually went to an old binder that I've had for a really long time where, probably 10, 15 years ago, I just took scrapbooking magazines and tore out pages of layouts that I liked, and I put them in my own little 3-ring binder. And I found this one here from Scrapbooks, etc. It's from December of 2009. And I really liked the layout here, and it's got a big strip for journaling, and I do have a lot to say on this layout, so I definitely wanted to make sure I left myself plenty of room for a lot of journaling. I also really liked the fact that that particular pattern just called for a couple of strips of paper, and I'm down to scraps for the most part, with the exception of this one full sheet here, so I knew that this was going to work perfectly. I wasn't sure if I wanted to build my layout on the pattern paper itself and then use the cardstock as one of my strips of paper, or if I wanted to do the reverse. So I did spend a little bit of time in making some of those paper decisions, light side, dark side, what's the base page going to be, but I decided to build it on this Periwinkle colored cardstock and then just cut down my scraps that I had left over in that paper pack. So I didn't really measure them, I just cut what I had available, and I know I'm going to have them come almost to the left side, but just not touch all the way across. So for right now, I'm just kind of laying them out and figuring out what order I want to put them all in. And I do kind of play around with that just a little bit. So this one scrap here, you can see I don't even have a long enough piece, but I figured that's okay because I can layer this other one here and there will be just a tiny seam and maybe it won't really show, or depending on the way that I put that journaling piece, I could probably also hide it. So I'm gonna make that work. I did turn to my stamp set to find, I knew I had like a die cut in here of the desk, so that way I could kind of get a visual of how big it was going to be and where it was going to sit on the page. So I do use my die cut piece just as a placeholder for a while. And I also pulled out one of the die cuts for that cute little typewriter. So I think this is going to work if I put those over to the left side of my photo, kind of like in that layout inspiration where there is like a title and a turkey over in the middle of the journaling piece of paper. So I cut a piece of white cardstock to be my journaling strip, and I'm just marking with a pencil about where I would need to cut it. And so I've gone ahead and trimmed that down, again, just using those die cut pieces as a guide for where that middle section is going to go. And then I'm going to make a couple more pencil marks again, so that way when I stamp my journaling lines, I can see where I need to break in the lines and leave myself a little bit of blank space in the middle of that white cardstock for my scene with the typewriter and the desk and the mice. So I do have a lot of journaling to go along with this picture. It is from December 2020, which was the school year after the COVID shutdown happened. I am a teacher, and we were in person for school that next following school year. But we went on a break to do some virtual learning from the middle of November through Christmas break. So one of my favorite things about that time period was that I got to meet a lot of my students' pets. We would be in class with cameras on, and along would come a dog or a cat or something like that. And so it was just a lot of fun to meet my students' pets. And I was in the middle of my English 9 class, and we were studying To Kill a Mockingbird. And one day in came my cat, who is named Boo Radley, after one of the characters in the book. And the kids all knew that I had a cat named Boo Radley, and they were just so excited to see him on camera finally. He wasn't going to be shy that day. And so I used the camera feature on my Chromebook to snap that selfie. So the picture itself is not a very good quality, but it is just kind of a special one to me because he has since passed away and I loved him very much. And it's just kind of fun to remember that time of, seeing everybody's pets. And he was a bit of a celebrity with my students. They just got such a kick out of seeing him on camera that day. So I thought it would be fun to use these stamped images here for my layout. Like I said, I was trying to use them not just on cards, but on a layout as well. And so since we were at home doing that virtual learning, that was what kind of made me think of the desk itself. Now, obviously, a typewriter is not the same as using a computer for virtual learning, but it's the same kind of idea. So I was like, the typewriter will work. And so I'm going to have that typewriter sitting on top of the desk. And even though they are mice and not cats, I thought that still kind of goes with the photo having a cat because of cats and mice sort of go together. So I don't know. I thought that the images worked well to capture the story behind this photo. And then I did stamp the sentiment, hello to you, I think it says, coming out of the typewriter, which I thought would kind of be like the kids, saying hello to Boo when he showed up on camera that day. So I went ahead and glued a couple of extra die cuts behind my colored pieces, and then I also used my sanding disc to scratch off the color from my base page there. It's a trick that I like to do, 2 tricks I like to do quite a bit. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start gluing things down. You can see over there to the side, I did already prep the letters for my title. I cut out a couple of extras so I can also glue those together for some added dimension. But I decided to use Virtual Celebrity as my title since we were doing virtual learning and my cat was a bit of a celebrity with my students. So I'm going to glue those letters together and then I will get them glued down to the page once I have all of this figured out. So now that I have this down, I'm again kind of playing with that scene. It did bother me a little bit that, the desk was going to go on straight. I didn't want to put it on crooked because that felt weird. But what also felt weird was that this stuff was all going to be straight on the page, but then the journaling lines were at a slant. So, obviously that is the nature of the layout and the journaling is supposed to be on an angle there, but it still just felt a little weird to kind of have straight and crooked. But I think it worked out in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get those guys glued down. And then right before I glued down that mouse that is sitting on the floor looking up at the typewriter, I kind of felt like he was floating in the middle of all of that white blank space. So I grabbed a really light colored gray marker and I'm just putting a little bit of a shadow down here all the way underneath the desk and where he's sitting. That way he has some kind of floor to sit on and it doesn't look like he and the desk are just floating in the middle of that journaling piece of cardstock. So I think that'll work right there, and I'll go ahead and glue him down and, like I said, extend this shadow line for the rest of the floor all the way over underneath the rest of the desk. So we'll get that done, and then it was kind of nice to be able to use that card making set on the layout. So I do love making cards with them too, though. All right, here you can see where I put down Virtual Celebrity, and again, a little bit of dimension to that because I had 3 layers of those letters glued together. I wanted to do a little something extra to the title, so I grabbed my white gel pen, and on each of the letters, I'm putting a line and 2 dots. And then I'm just varying where exactly on the letters that happens and if the dots are on top of the line or on the bottom of the line, just for a little bit of visual interest. All right, it wouldn't be a Jessica layout without a little bit of stitching. So I felt like the top of that white piece was a little bit boring and blank. So what I'm going to do is use my stitching ruler here to punch in 2 different lines, and I'm going to stagger them. And I'm just going to put 2 rows of stitches here at the top of the piece. That way it looks like it is sewn down to the page. And I'll use a little bit of turquoise colored embroidery thread for that. And then once I did that, I thought, you know what, now that I've introduced that thread, I need to bring it elsewhere onto my layout. Now, when I went back to that original layout from the magazine that I was using as inspiration, they did have a circle over to the right side of the photo there. So that was what made me think of my white acrylic buttons. So I'm just going to scatter a couple of buttons around the page so that I have a visual triangle. And then of course I will sew them on with that same thread just to bring that elsewhere onto the layout. And at this point I am nearly done, but I thought, what else could I do? And then I thought I'm going to bring in a little bit of stickles. So I almost went nuts and kind of stickled all of the things, but in the end I decided just to put a little glab of stickles over top of that yellow light bulb in the lamp to make it look like it is glowing. And that is going to be it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. I know some people prefer to have double page layouts with lots of photos, but for me, this was the only one that I had, and it was a special photo and worthy of a layout. And I was excited to use those stamp sets that I had so much fun making cards with on a layout as well. So I hope it was inspiring for you and that you enjoyed watching. I will see you guys next time. Happy crafting!